3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. I'm Ash, and today I want to talk about Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. This is the masterpiece comic by Rick Remender and Andre Lee Marajo that I've been reading for it's been about a year. This is issue 11. This is the final issue. This is a book that I got put onto by a friend of the channel, Skip and Tosh. If you followed the old indie comic show, we talked about this book quite a bit. We didn't really go into a ton of detail, but I think we both we hyped up the book. Now, this is issue 11, the final issue. For the first 10 issues, this book was probably the best comic book on stands. So I think you might know where I'm getting with this. But I don't really want to talk about this issue. Let's go back to the beginning. Righteous Thirst for Vengeance caught my eye because it reminded me of Japanese gangster films. In particular, probably one of the most famous Japanese actors, Beat Takeshi. Real name Takeshi Kitano. There's one of his famous films, Outrage. When I saw the cover of Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, it immediately evoked that similar feeling. The character here, Sonny, it's not clear exactly what his ethnic background is. He looks very much like, what's his name? Is it Benedict Wong? Anyways, the guy who plays Wong in the Doctor Strange films. And Rick Remender is friends with him, so I believe that's probably intentional. Either way, he's Asian. It looks like a gangster film. Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, it all has it. When Skip said this is the best book on the shelf, and we were doing Firepower, I was like, this is better than Firepower. I had to check it out, and he was right. This book is an absolute masterpiece. Now, I'm probably going to repeat myself on some of the things that I've talked about in the past, and if you've been following me, I just ask that I guess maybe bear with me, indulge me. And if you don't care about this, I guess you're gonna tune into something else. I don't want you to go, but can't keep you here. Have a swig of beer. Yeah. So I just reread this whole series. I read the final issue, and then I was like, And when I was thinking about how I want to do a video because it's over, I'm not sure how to do a video on this book. And I said, let me go back to the first issue and just capture, just get a feel of how it started, and I just couldn't stop reading it again. Now, one thing about this particular book, and let me see if this will let me, there we go. One thing about this book that is both a pro and a con is this was an absolute pleasure and a joy and a thrill to read as a monthly periodical. I know a lot of people, they like to, it's very common these days to I'm gonna wait for the trade. I'm just gonna wait for the trade. And believe me, I understand where you're coming from. There are books I wait for the trade. But I think when I was thinking about doing this video and what I was going to talk about, besides the book itself, one of the things I really wanted to talk about was I hate trade waiting. And this book is the epitome of why. I love this book. Each month, it was a joy to I absolutely could not wait to read the next issue. And it was a pain when I finished the issue. I mean, like, it was a pain inside to be like, no, I gotta wait a month. But that agonizing wait just enhanced the enthusiasm for the book, enhanced the excitement. I got to draw this book out for 11 months of fun. I just reread 11 issues in less than an hour. This is a super fast book to read through. As you can see here on the page, there's no dialogue. There's no text. Rick Remender and Andre work together here to create a story that does have text. I mean, it does have dialogue, you'll see, but they tell a story that's visual. They really understand their medium. And while Andre Lima Araujo isn't what I would call one of my favorite artists, by the time I was done with this first issue, he was definitely someone I really knew I enjoyed. And now that this series is over, I've enjoyed it for about a year. He is one of my favorite. I'm going to definitely be looking at what he does in the future, because what he lacks, and it's not even necessarily a lacking, it's just a stylistic thing, in his illustration quality, his rendering. You're going to notice here, if you look at the art, it's a very indie style art. It's not your comic booky, type of, I don't know how I'm trying to say, like, where mainstream comics that focus on like the anatomy and drawing muscle bound characters. It's just a very more indie style. I don't want to say it's realistic. You can look and see for yourself what it's like. It's not something I don't find as pretty and appealing normally to look at. But his sequential art, his storytelling ability through pictures is supreme. I'm doing a chef's kiss. It is. He can tell a story without. I mean, you can see there's no word balloons, there's no narration. It's so cinematic. He understands how to keep you following the information that's on the screen visually. And Rick works flawlessly with him to write scenes that don't require narration. And that's a skillful writer. Writing comics isn't about putting words on page. It's about putting story on page. And if the more story that you can allow the artist to tell rather than your words, I think often it's going to be better. It's the old adage, show, don't tell. So I was blown away by this first issue. Now, where am I getting about the way for the trade? Here's the thing. You can blast through this book, and you will when you read it in a trade. Like, I just reread it. I just blasted through it. Now, part of it's because I kind of knew what the story was. But this is not one you want to do. You really want to pace yourself. You really want to read the comic the way you listen to music. I use this analogy quite a bit. Music has a certain beats per minute. When you play music, when you listen, you don't listen to it on fast forward. You don't listen on slow, because it alters it. It would, in most cases, ruin the music. You need to listen at the pace that it was the artist created it as. This is the same thing with this comic, and any good comic. I mean, I guess shitty comics, there's no saving them, but here the paneling clues you in on the pacing. Typically, the smaller the panel, the faster or the quicker you move on. Larger panels have a longer beat count, if you think about it. And when you train yourself, and you may already know all this, so I'm not trying to talk to anyone like they're stupid, but some people are new to comics, some people have never thought about this. and honestly, a lot of professionals don't even know this, and so it doesn't work with them because they don't know how to actually structure a page, or an artist doesn't know how to do layouts and actually use paneling, and so you can't do that. But when a good artist, when a master, this is why, if you know me, why I'm so huge on Frank Miller, because he's a guy that understands this. Also, Andre understands this too. The flow of the comic. And when you train yourself, you don't have to think about it anymore. In the beginning, it's a little difficult. You have to like focus and say, okay, using this page as an example, this first panel with the bus is, I'm going to linger on this panel a little longer. The second line, each of those panels are going to be about half the time as the first panel above, right? Because they're half the size, right? And then down below, faster, and then lingering. Once you start doing this, when you train yourself to do this, it becomes kind of natural. And I'm telling you, it will enhance your experience quite a bit. Furthermore, in this particular book, there's so much detail, subtle clues that the artist puts in that are important. Hear about the cigarettes, hear about what he's looking at on his little iPad or whatever, about Andrew's accuser disappears, FBI sex trafficking case. This is all super relevant to the very last book of the story. Now, you may not know that when you're originally reading it, and you don't know what's important and what's not important. And in comics, a lot of times, bad artists, bad writers, there's just a lot of fluff in the frame. They're just drawing stuff to take up space. But that's not how you should write. One of my literature teachers taught me about, she had said something to me. Every word you put on your page, and I was writing prose, but should have a purpose. If it's just there to fill a word count, then it doesn't belong. It needs to be cut. And that can be hard to do, but you get the point. Here, the main character, Sonny, we don't really know who he is. He's kind of on a journey, and he stumbles across this guy in a convenience store, and he's kind of pissed off. Now, actually, before I get ahead, okay, yeah, and this is kind of one of the hooks to where the story is going to go. It's really a story about confrontations with hitmen, and this blonde-haired guy, turns out that he is a hitman. There's a scene here with this bird that seems kind of innocuous at first, but when I went back, now that I've read the whole story, and this scene here with the bird feels like the crux of the entire series. And he comes across this kid who just says some things to him, which was kind of weird at the beginning when I read it, because I was like, for a book that is not about fluff, where they're really trying to be efficient with the dialogue and the narration, not really mincing words, this just seemed to be kind of a bunch of nonsense. And this kid is just telling Sonny, who he doesn't know, he's just at the bus stop, and he's like, "Oh, it's suffering, I don't know what to do. I guess in the movies they break their necks, but I'm not going to grab the thing with my hands. I thought I'd stomp on it and break its neck that way, but what if I did it wrong and then it didn't die? What if I had to do it a few times? Wouldn't that be way worse than going slowly and bleeding out? And then, why is it on my shoulders? Because I just happened to be here." And he gets on the bus, and then Sonny is looking at it. And then he gets on the bus, and he's thinking. And then we see the bus stop. Screet! And then Sonny gets off the bus, walks over, stomps on the bird, puts it out of its misery, but the bus is gone. And thematically, that is a touchstone to what the entire book is about. That this character, Sonny, he can't walk away from things. He he's not like this kid who's just like, oh, why has it got to happen to me? Why is it on my shoulders as I'm here? Sonny just happened to be here, and so he puts it on his shoulders. And the rest of the book gets more severe. And it starts off as a bit of a slow burn, but by the second act, you can see here's some pretty violent stuff. By the second act in the storyline, it gets really intense, and each issue is just a cliffhanger after cliffhanger. So going back to talking about waiting for trades. This book, I believe, ended prematurely. When I said I'm not going to talk about the last book, part of it is because it is a bit of a letdown. The book does not stick the landing. Or maybe to be a little bit more generous, I'll say that this has a really bumpy landing. It has to land in a dirt field, and it comes down hard, and it's not a complete crash. I didn't find myself just being like, oh, that's terrible, it sucks. But for how awesome this book was, it didn't deserve to be cut short. Now, I believe Rick Remender has been heard or quoted saying something to the effect of, like, they got to finish their book or whatever. And I don't know. I'm not Rick. I'm not an authority on this. So what I'm telling you now is speculation. But I very firmly believe that this book was cut short. I believe it didn't sell well, and it didn't get to reach however many issues that they were intending to do. And that's very common in the comic book industry today. Not just with indies, mainstreams too. We see them all the time. Marvel and DC are cutting books. And it's a shame, because this series was so good. Now, I do believe, if Rick did say something to that effect, that there's kind of it's like a partial truth, right? I believe that he knew how the overall ending was going to be. And I'm guessing, as I think about this book, I'm guessing that he had probably planned like 2 issues or so, 2 to 3 issues of like resolution, and then sort of kept them in his back pocket, and then told the first 2 acts of the story, and just like let it run until he realized, okay, we only have so many issues left. We got to cancel this thing, because publications about 3-4 months ahead typically. From when you cancel a book, usually you already have like 2 or 3 issues in the process of being printed and released and so forth. So that delay, it's like, oh, okay, we're going to cancel this book. I got 3 issues left. Wrap it up. And immediately go to the end. Because the book does have an ending. It just feels like it just comes out of left field. Like it didn't feel like a natural progression. The pacing of the first 10 issues, and then that 11th issue feels super abrupt. This book, it's so good. If you just look at the pages here, it's probably not going to seem like much, but I'm telling you, you get into the emotions of this character, which you see through like facial expressions and the encounters that it comes across, and you feel that thrill. The tension is, you can cut it with a knife. When you read this as a trade, you're going to feel some of what I'm talking about, but you're not going to have to wait a month to find out what happened. You're going to be on this issue just as faster than I was here. And you're going to move on to the rest of this story and see what Sonny's doing. You see here he goes to the next person on the list, these hit lists, and he's pretending to be a hitman too. And you get to this point where this guy, I forget his name, but he's the other guy. There's like 2 hitmen. He's pretending to be one of them, and there's this other hitman, and they got to kill this girl. You don't really know who she is at the point of the story, and they leave you off with like, oh shit, they're going to kill her. Now, you know he's a good guy at this point, and so what's he going to do? You also know that he's not like a professional hitman or anything. He's just like a normal Joe. He's in way over his head. You can see just in this panel, I mean, he's sweating bullets. And this story does such a great job of making you feel that anxiety. So I don't want to spoil this series for you. I do think it's worth reading. I do lament that in the trade, it's not going to be the same experience that I had reading through the floppies. But even more importantly, I lament that this book did not get to breathe the full life that it should have had. And that's because it didn't sell in the floppies. And I think too many people, well, number one, too many people didn't buy the book. But if a lot of those people were people like, oh, I was going to buy it, but I'm going to wait for the trade, this is indicative of the problem in this industry. Without floppies, you can't have the trades. And I don't know what the answer to that is, right? It's the same thing that the movies have the problem. It's like, well, I'm just going to wait for DVD or wait for streaming these days. Well, if you don't go to the theaters, they may not make the movies, and then you don't get them on DVD anyway. Or you do get DVD, but it's a direct-to-DVD, and those movies, there's a noticeable downgrade in quality. And, you know, we're always going to get comic books, right? The industry of comics is never going to go away completely, but it could radically change. We could just be getting like web comics by really amateur creators that work for peanuts because there's no money in the industry anymore, but they just do it because they love it. And the days of having the premium A-list creators could go away because they can get paid with their talent in other areas. You know, already that's a big problem. If you're a really highly skilled artist, doing comics is low pay grade. You go work in the video game industry, or, I mean, even like role-playing games, or doing art for, doing art for Magic cards. There's so many fields. I mean, illustrating covers for novels and things like that. There's movie posters, whatever. There's so many other avenues that you can make money. Heck, you can make a ton of money doing like illustrations for like a tech manual for a corporation that they pay. Now it's boring work. If you're a comic book artist, you're like, I'd rather do cool comics. But so this is a problem, and it's hard to keep these guys in the industry as it's dying. So I don't want to lecture you on what you should or shouldn't do. Obviously, you do what you want. I mean, it's your money, it's your life. But I just kind of want to bring that to your attention, because if you like comics, waiting for the trade is it's understandable, but you could be hurting it. I honestly, this is why I really want to support the best books. I buy the floppies. I like the trades. I get all the criminal books. I don't buy the floppies. I can just get them in the hardcovers and so forth, because this is a different style of book. I don't feel like it's an ongoing series, you know. But if I were buying like Marvel or DC comics, I love collecting the floppies. This particular book just happened to be one of those books that I think is, not only do I want it to continue and I don't want it to suffer from people trade waiting, but I genuinely think this book was way better enjoyed in the monthly floppy release and extending that time period over 11 months. And I had a ton of fun talking with Skip about this each month as a new issue would come out, and other people, and just be like, oh, just what's going on? And we would theorize what was going on, because there's so much mystery in the story. The story doesn't tell you who Sonny is. You don't know why he's doing what he's doing. There's so much going on, and that theory crafting that makes you go, oh, is it like this? Maybe he's doing this? That builds up the anticipation as you find out, and it makes it so fun to talk about it with other readers. Unfortunately, doing videos about it would really spoil it, and I think this is a type of book that you don't want. It's not going to be as the same experience if you kind of know what's happening. When I reread it again, I knew what all was going to happen, and I still enjoyed it. It's really well done, but I didn't enjoy it like the first time. So this is a book that's a high recommend. Like I said, issues 1 through 10, superb. Issue 11, it's one of those things where it feels more like an epilogue. It jumps ahead 10 years and stuff resolves, and it's the end. Now it works because issue 10 has a slam bang finale. And as I was reading these books, for the second time, not the first time, but the second time I was reading these books, I was like, wow, this would be a really badass movie. Like a gritty crime, action film in the style of the Takeshi Kitano film that I showed you, Outrage. You probably haven't seen it, but I think you can kind of get a picture. Not like a big Hollywood, glitzy, glammy type of thing, but the old school, like drama, like a Martin Scorsese film. Like this story is gritty, and the action scenes for a comic book are very mundane. It's like, ooh, a little car chase down the street or something. It's very mundane, but there's so much drama to it that it really flies off the page. And in a movie, in a really well done film by an acclaimed director, I think this could be really fantastic. Like I said, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of action scenes, a lot of different encounters that Sonny goes through, meets some different people, and this book takes you for a ride. So on the one hand, I highly, highly recommend this series. It's been one of the best books in the past year for sure. I really consider it, other than the landing, a masterpiece. I don't know how many issues this book really was going to go on. I don't even 100% know that I'm correct about it. I really want to believe that I'm correct, because if this was planned as 11 issues from the beginning, come on, Rick. You failed yourself. The pacing just feels off. It just comes to a screeching halt not out of nowhere, but just really abruptly. But still a fun read. Like I said, I read it again, and just had a blast. If you're a fan of comic books and visual storytelling, if you like writing, if you like analyzing, like I do, I kind of like, when I read good comics, I like to pore over them and think, why is this good? Why is this page working for me? What separates this from other comics that don't quite, achieve the same success or whatever? I just have a lot of fun. You may not nerd out about it that way, and I know I'm blabbing in the weeds. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you. I just wanted to give this book some attention, talk about it, because it's over now, so I'm not going to really have any more chances. So I hope that you will check it out. Borrow someone's copy if you're not going to buy it. I'm sure there's going to be a collected edition soon. I'm not sure whether I'm going to get it or not. A couple months ago, if you would have asked, before I knew this was being canceled, like if you would have asked me, are you going to get collected editions, I would be like, for sure. This is that good of a book. This is one of those books where I'm like, yes, I'm going to rebuy it as a nice deluxe hardcover, because it's just so masterfully done. It's a book that is great on the rereads, because I adore the skill, the art. It's a visual treat to read. So I don't really know what's more to say on it. Just be prepared, if you do, that it does kind of have that abrupt. Doesn't ruin the book. This book is so good, but it definitely tarnishes it. And one last thing I want to say about this, if you do read this series, consider pacing yourself. Consider forcing yourself a delay between issues, even if it's just a day, right? Read it, and when you get to the end of a single issue, force yourself to stop. Like I said, even if it's just a day, to say, okay, well, I'll read the next issue tomorrow. You may not want to, and that's a sign of a good story. Like, you're like, no, I need to keep reading. But just do it. Put yourself through that I don't want to say agony. It's a little bit too much, but that'll take you 11 days if you do that to finish this. But I promise you that will add to the experience. Just having to go through that. Let me know if you've read this series, what you thought about it. If you're interested in reading this series. If you have any recommendations, if you say, oh yeah, Ash, I read this. If you like this, you'll like that. That's great. I now have a hole in my subscription to fill. So I'm looking for new books. So Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, Rick Remender, Andre Lima Araujo. Absolutely one of the best books. Deserves some attention. And I'm really, really sad to see it come to this conclusion. But thank you so much for making it this far and watching, and I'll see you next time.